Alright, in this tutorial we're going to learn how to make a brush in Adobe Illustrator that will look like a motorcycle chain. Now you can see here that I've got one that's in a round and one that's got on a rectangle. And the rectangle application gives it some problems in the corners. And the nice thing about that is rarely do we see a chain going around a corner on a motorcycle. But you may want to use this as a border, and there will be some ways to figure out how to get around those problems using maybe rounded rectangles or some other workarounds. We're going to initially look at just the basic making of the brush though. So again, we want to look at the basic construction of a motorcycle chain. Essentially there's a bunch of links stuck together. There's primary links and inner links, or linking links, main links and connecting links, I guess. And sometimes you'll see these master links here which connect the whole thing together. So another view of it, essentially you have a figure 8 type shape with posts running through it, and this gives us a sense of what we're looking at. And this is a nice thing to work with when you're trying to develop some biker or motorcycle related graphics. So we're going to go to Adobe Illustrator, make a new file. I'm going to make this letter size. Let's pretend like I'm trying to make some letterhead with some chain around it, or a menu, or a graphic of some kind for a motorcycle company. And I'm going to start off by making a ellipse. And I'm going to fill the ellipse with sort of a gray color. I'm thinking metal. And I'm going to use the shift key to make that shape with, because it'll come out circular that way. Now as you can see, the line around the outside is not very bold, and the thing to keep in mind with that is that if I shrink this down, that line will get thicker relative to the main shape. So we want to keep that in mind, because we're going to, at this time, we're going to draw it big but shrink it down later. So I'm going to actually make it look the way I want it to look first, and then I'm going to take. So now that I've got the circle looking the way I want it to, I'm going to Alt-Shift drag it to the right with the selection tool. And I'm going to make now two circles that are tangent to each other. So I'm going to use this to turn them into a figure 8. So I'm going to choose the window menu. I want to make sure I've got my Pathfinder. Pathfinder appears to be somewhere. There it is. Pathfinder. And I'm going to join those shapes. Now I'm going to use the Sub-Select tool, or the Direct Selection tool. And I'm going to change both these middle points to curved up here. And then one at a time, I'm going to move those points up so it looks like a figure 8. And I want to get them to match. So I'm using the arrow keys to move them down. And I'm going to check it out. Pretty happy. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do, and I maybe should have done this first, is I'm going to make another ellipse. And this is the pin that goes through the middle of it. In this particular case, I'm going to take off the stroke around the outside. Maybe make it brighter, shinier. Okay, and if I want to get really fancy, I might apply a gradient to it. And I'm not going to worry about that right now. We're just going to make the basic shapes and let you worry about colors on yours yourself. So there's that. Maybe I apply a little bit of stroke to it. I don't know. Maybe a little bit of gray with a smaller line around it. Let's go like this. Why am I not getting a line around it? Okay, so there's a little bit of stroke. 1, maybe 2. Okay, that works pretty good. Now I'm going to Alt drag that one over using the selection tool. Alt Shift drag makes a copy. Now I've got my basic primary main link. That looks okay. Next thing I want to do is I want to make the links that are connect, because if this is all I use, I'm going to have a bunch of separated links looking together that don't connect. So I'm going to take this piece here, Alt-Shift drag it to the right, like that. I'm going to line that up with the other one, and I'm going to use Object, Arrange, Send to the back. So I want that one to be the connecting link. And if you want, you can even make that one slightly darker so you have some variety in the links. And we can take this now. Eventually we need to cut this in half, so what I'll do is do that now and then copy it. So I'm going to take these two links here, those two, that point there, and I'm going to use cut path at selected anchor point. Let's do it again here. What that does, it doesn't look like it's any different, but what that did is it took this one piece and made it into two. So having cut that there, I'm going to drag this one right. You know, I just alt dragged it. I'm just going to drag it right. I'm using shift, which is going to keep it in place. And I do want these to extend out a little bit. Okay. So what I can do also is take the points and using the direct selection tool and move those out. I want to be careful not to get the other object selected. And there's my link with the connecting links between it. So now that we've got the piece, as I said earlier, these lines are going to stay the same, so their relative size compared to the main shape is going to be different. So if I shrink it down, the line's going to be too big. So what I want those to do is stay consistent. So I'm going to take this object, I'm going to use Object, Expand. Now what that does, let's zoom in on it so you can see what you're doing. We have on the outside centerline shapes for those lines. The strokes are centerline objects. If I choose Expand, that turns those into outline shapes. And so that now when I shrink this down, the size of those lines relative to the main object stays the same. And that's what I want. So before I turn this into a brush, I'm going to take this object and shrink it down to the size I think I'm going to use it at. You can always change it later, but you want to have some flexibility. I'm pretty happy with that. We're going to open up our brush panel somewhere. There it is. And I'm going to drag that shape into my brush. Now this is going to become a pattern brush. A pattern brush makes a pattern based on that. And this one is going to let me choose some other shapes for these corners. I'm not going to worry about that now. I'm just going to keep the original. I'm going to not stretch to fit. I'm going to not add, let's see. I guess, let's try what this works. And I can always edit those settings later. So now that I've got that shape, let's draw a rectangle, or better yet a circle. Because as we remember, a rectangle is not going to give me the same results because of the corners. So let's apply that. And that worked just fine. Now what happens if I increase the stroke thickness? It just gives me a bigger chain. Now if it gets too big, it eventually gets sort of deformed. So you want to keep this at a relatively reasonable size, and that'll work. Now if you're going to use this on corners or something like that, you can always take individual pieces, and what you do to make the corners, I'm going to take this and this and this, and I'm going to Alt Shift drag those straight up. So I'm going to take a copy of the main link and open up my swatch panel. Where's my swatches? Here we go, swatches. And what I'll do is I'll take this object and drop it into my swatches. I think I'll take another one that's going to be at a 45-degree angle and drop that in there also. And then 45 it the other way. Oh, I just spun out a little bit, and I think that one went the way I wanted it to go. So drop that one in there. So now when I open up that brush, which I just made a second ago, I've already lost my brush panel, window, brushes. There it is. So if I open this up, I can take swatches to put on these corners. And these corners here go the same direction. I'm not too clear on why they're different. So if I add this and apply it to the strokes, now we can attempt to apply this to a rectangle. Okay, rectangle has square corners, and chains don't do square corners too good. Okay, not too bad, not too bad. It creates a few issues here and there, and if you goof with the size of the rectangle, that may take care of some of those issues. Okay, so that works okay. There are other workarounds that you could do to make rectangle shapes. You could just build your rectangle and cut the corners. So if I go to each of these corners and cut path anchor point, that's another workaround that makes it look a little bit different. And you might like the way that works, and you might not. So you can try different things out to make that work, and that's how you make a motorcycle chain brush in Illustrator. And again, the bonus here is it allows you to make designs real easy with the chain. Again, you can use these for page borders, menus, web graphics, print stuff, all kinds of cool things. All right, there you have it. Rock.